Usually, you think of artificial intelligence as something trapped safely behind a glass screen, right?
Yeah, exactly. Digital and contained.
Right. It's a chatbot generating code or, a voice coming out of a smart speaker on your counter. It's totally weightless.
But that glass is shattering.
It really is. And tech giants are quietly handing over um, $18 billion in raw cash paying for factory outgrowth years before it even exists.
Because the AI boom is suddenly, well, it's growing legs. Literal.
Literally.
Yeah.
We are stepping out of the digital realm and diving headfirst into the physical world. And it is triggering this massive, just multi-billion-dollar hardware panic across the global supply chain.
And if you want to know what happens next, you don't look at the software updates, you have to follow the hardware.
Exactly. So for you listening, welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a really fascinating stack of sources to go through today.
It's really revealing stuff.
Yeah, starting with a breaking financial report from Benzinga that exposes a severe memory shortage. Plus, we've got a supply chain leak confirming Apple's immediate hardware plans for the iPhone 18.
And then there's the big one.
Right, this massive Morgan Stanley blue paper that maps out a group they're calling the Humanoid 100.
The scale of this transition is, it's almost difficult to wrap your head around.
It sounds like science fiction.
It does. But Morgan Stanley isn't just projecting some new gadget cycle here. They're projecting a total addressable market of $60 trillion.
Wait, 60 trillion?
$60 trillion for physical embodied AI.
That's roughly half the GDP of the entire planet.
It is, but you have to factor in what this technology is actually going to replace or augment. It touches global manufacturing, logistics, home care, really the very meaning of human labor.
So it's fundamentally altering how the physical world operates.
Exactly. But to get to that $60 trillion future, these companies have to survive a really brutal immediate reality on the ground right now.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that reality is the hardware squeeze.
Right.
We can't really talk about walking, autonomous humanoid robots taking over warehouse floors until we look at what is fueling the panic today.
The biggest tech companies in the world are just vacuuming up computing power and memory at a rate we have literally never seen.
Which brings us to the Micron numbers.
Yeah, so if you look at the Benzinga report on Micron's third quarter earnings, this is from June 24th, 2026, the data points to pure desperation.
How bad is it?
Well, Micron CEO Sanjay Mehrotra basically revealed a supply shortage so severe that customers are completely abandoning their standard purchasing cycles.
So they're just changing how they do business entirely.
Yeah. Instead of normal cycles, they are making these massive multi-year commitments just to guarantee they aren't left empty-handed. They've locked in 16 strategic agreements across data centers, consumer tech, and automotive sectors.
But the financial structure of those agreements is what really stops you in your tracks.
It's staggering.
They've secured $22 billion in customer commitments. But, and here's the crazy part, tech giants are so terrified of the supply chain drying up that roughly $18 billion of that is in actual cash deposits.
Upfront cash.
Yeah, they are handing over billions in cash today for contracts spanning up to 5 years.
Which tells you everything you need to know about the physical constraints of this AI boom. That $18 billion, it covers 20% of Micron's total DRAM volume and a third of its NAND memory volume.
Wow, a third of it.
Yeah. And Mehrotra stated plainly that they expect these constrained, tight conditions to persist well beyond calendar 2027. They have a zero line of sight on when supply will actually catch up with demand.
I want to push back on this a little bit, though, because, I understand data centers need upgrades, but handing over cash for hardware that won't be built until, the end of the decade?
It seems extreme.
It's like paying full price for a house today that won't be built until 2030 just because you're terrified the world is running out of bricks. Is AI really demanding this much hardware, or is this just executive FOMO?
Like Amazon hoarding chips just because Google is hoarding chips.
Exactly. Is it just panic?
Well, it definitely looks like panic buying from the outside, but the underlying engineering actually requires it. AI is structurally transforming the memory industry because of how these models function.
Walk me through that.
So you need DRAM, which is your fast, short-term working memory, for the AI to process information and make real-time decisions. That's what we call inference.
Okay, inference, got it.
But you also need vast, just massive amounts of NAND memory, the long-term storage, to actually hold these multi-billion parameter models locally.
And we're seeing that local requirement trickle down from multi-million-dollar data centers right into the pocket of the person listening to this deep dive.
We really are.
Because the excerpt we have regarding the iPhone 18 confirms Apple is equipping every single model with 12 gigabytes of RAM.
Which is huge for them.
Right. Historically, Apple is incredibly stingy with RAM. So jumping to 12 gigs as a baseline, that's a massive architectural shift, entirely designed to support Edge AI.
Exactly. And Edge AI just means the artificial intelligence is processing data directly on your device, so at the edge of the network.
Rather than sending it up to a cloud server and waiting for a response.
Right. Because if you want an AI assistant that can seamlessly read your screen, understand your context, and react instantly without lagging, the memory has to be physically sitting inside the phone.
So the foundation of this panic is the realization that to make AI actually useful, it has to move out of the cloud and into the local physical object.
Yeah, and that migration from bits and bytes on a server to atoms and photons in the real world, that brings us to the Morgan Stanley Humanoid 100 report.
Because the smartphone is just a stepping stone.
Right. The ultimate physical object for AI is a humanoid robot, embodied AI.
Here's where it gets really interesting, but honestly, it still sounds like a pitch for a sci-fi blockbuster to me.
It does have that vibe.
Right. I know we see these highly produced videos of robots doing backflips online, but is Wall Street actually treating this as an immediate industrial shift? Or is this just a long-term hype cycle to keep stock prices inflated?
It's immediate. The catalyst that forced the entire global supply chain to treat this as an immediate reality actually happened at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2025.
What happened there?
NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang dedicated roughly 40 minutes of his keynote exclusively to physical AI and robotics.
40 minutes just on physical AI.
Yeah. And when the company that makes the chips powering the entire AI revolution tells the market that embodied AI is the next frontier, well, the major manufacturers immediately retool their factories.
And Morgan Stanley reacted by basically drawing the treasure map.
Exactly. They published the Humanoid 100 to outline exactly who is building the pieces of this new industry.
So how do they break it down?
They divided the emerging value chain into 3 distinct sectors to help investors track the money. First, you have the brain.
Which is the chips and software.
Right, the semiconductor chips and the underlying code. Second, you have the body, which is the physical industrial components. Finally, you have the integrators. Those are the massive companies that take the brains and the bodies and assemble them into a functioning machine.
But are they retooling for this right now? Like if you walk onto a factory floor today, are they actively building components for humanoid robots, or is this still on a whiteboard somewhere?
Oh, it is happening right now. According to Morgan Stanley's research, 52% of the 100 companies they tracked are reported to be actively involved in the humanoid supply chain today.
Over half of them. Wow.
And the other 48% are perceived to have material potential to join imminently, mostly because they already manufacture the exact components required.
Let's open up the blueprint then.
Okay.
If you're listening to this and trying to visualize what a $60 trillion robotic ecosystem actually looks like from the inside out, what exactly are these companies mass producing?
Well, let's start with the brain. A humanoid brain is vastly different from a text-generating chatbot.
Because it has to move.
Right. It relies on foundational physical models.
Yeah.
NVIDIA's Project Gruser-T is a prime example. A chatbot just predicts the next logical word in a sentence.
Which is complicated enough.
Sure, but a physical model has to instantly perceive a chaotic, three-dimensional environment. It has to understand physics, calculate gravity, friction, and momentum in real time.
Which requires an unbelievable amount of training. I mean, you can't just unleash a prototype into a living room and let it crash into the furniture a million times while it learns to walk.
No, you definitely can't. And that is exactly where simulation software becomes critical. It's also why the memory demands we saw with Micron are so astronomical.
How does the simulation work?
These companies build highly detailed digital twins of the real world. So the robot's brain practices walking, lifting, and navigating in a simulated physics engine millions of times.
Like a hyper-realistic video game.
Exactly. And it does this before a single line of code is ever downloaded into a physical machine.
So it has to perfectly master the digital world before it's allowed to inhabit the physical one.
Right.
But once it does download into a machine, we enter the second sector, the body. What is actually replacing the human muscle here?
The primary components of the body are the actuators. These are the mechanical muscles that create movement. But you can't just use standard electric motors.
Why not?
Humanoids require incredibly specialized hardware, like Harmonic reducers.
Let's define that, because that sounds highly specialized.
It is. A harmonic reducer is essentially a high-precision gear system that allows a robotic joint to move with absolutely zero backlash or wobble.
Okay, so it's about precision.
Yes. Think about it. If a robot is handing you a cup of hot coffee or using a power tool on an assembly line, the arm cannot shake. It can't overshoot its target by even a millimeter. The power from the motor has to be delivered flawlessly.
That makes sense. And I saw in the sources they also rely heavily on something called planetary roller screws.
Yes, those are vital. They take the spinning, rotary motion of an electric motor and convert it into a straight, linear, pushing or pulling motion.
Like a piston.
Very similar to a piston, yeah. But planetary roller screws can handle immense amounts of force in a very compact space.
So that's how it supports its own weight.
Exactly. That is how a slender robotic leg can support a heavy metal frame, or how an arm can lift a 50-pound box without the internal mechanisms just snapping under the sheer torque.
Okay, so you have these high-torque actuators serving as the muscle. Then you have the nervous system.
Right, the sensors. You have cameras for computer vision so it can map its surroundings.
Yep.
You have LiDAR, which shoots out laser pulses to measure exact distances and depth perception. And crucially, you have force and torque sensors in the joints.
Why are force sensors so important?
Because the robot needs to know how hard it is interacting with the physical world.
Oh, like gripping strength.
Exactly. If it picks up an egg, it needs a sensor to tell the brain to stop squeezing before the shell cracks.
Right.
And powering all of this computing, vision, and heavy movement is a massive lithium-ion battery. Interestingly, most designs mount this battery directly in the center of the robot's chest.
Which makes perfect sense from a physics standpoint, right? If a bipedal robot is going to balance on two legs, you need the heaviest component, the battery, situated exactly where the human center of mass is, right in the torso.
Exactly. But the actual movement, the fluidity of how these things navigate, that comes down to a specific metric.
Degrees of freedom.
Yes, degrees of freedom, or DOF. This metric measures the number of independent ways a joint or a mechanism can move in three-dimensional space.
So where are we at right now with that?
Current humanoids in development have anywhere between 16 and 60 degrees of freedom across their entire chassis.
The sources gave a highly specific breakdown of Tesla's Optimus Gen 2 robot as an example of this. It utilizes 50 degrees of freedom, and that's driven by 28 specific actuators.
And notice the split in those actuators. They have 14 linear actuators for pushing and pulling, and 14 rotary actuators for turning and pivoting.
It's so balanced.
It is. But the real marvel of engineering is in the extremities. The latest Optimus hand design features 22 degrees of freedom.
22 independent movements in a single hand.
Exactly. And when you factor in that a biological human hand has 27 degrees of freedom, you realize we're no longer looking at those clunky pincer-style claws from the 90s.
We are shockingly close to replicating the full dexterity of the human hand in a mass-produced machine.
Very close.
So if you strip away all the sci-fi aesthetics, the shiny plastics, and the aluminum alloys, a humanoid robot is essentially a highly articulated electric vehicle on legs.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, it's a massive battery running high-torque motors, managed by a central computer, navigating its environment using cameras and LiDAR.
It is an EV on legs, but with a really critical layer of added complexity.
Which is?
An electric car only has to navigate a two-dimensional plane, a flat road. A bipedal robot has to constantly calculate its own balance and momentum in three-dimensional space while navigating stairs, avoiding clutter, and manipulating physical objects.
Which demands an entirely different level of manufacturing expertise. If these machines require EV-sized batteries, zero backlash harmonic reducers, and cutting-edge silicon brains, who actually has the factory floor space to integrate all these pieces?
And this brings us to the third sector of Morgan Stanley's map, the integrators.
The final piece of the puzzle.
Because the underlying architecture is so closely related to an electric vehicle, the companies best positioned to build humanoids aren't obscure robotics startups working in a garage.
Right.
They are massive legacy automakers. Morgan Stanley points directly to giants like Tesla, BYD, and Toyota.
And you also have consumer electronics titans like Apple and Xiaomi involved, companies that already understand global supply chains, battery integration, and consumer product scaling better than anyone on Earth.
And then on top of that, you have the end users driving the demand, like the e-commerce titans.
Like Amazon.
Amazon's a perfect example. They already deploy hundreds of thousands of wheeled industrial robots in their fulfillment centers, right? But they are actively testing Agility Robotics' bipedal robot, Digit.
Because warehouses are built for humans.
Exactly. A bipedal robot can step over fallen boxes, climb stairs, and reach shelves designed for humans without Amazon having to redesign their entire warehouse architecture.
So the biggest auto, tech, and retail companies in the world are racing to build and deploy the hardware, but where are they building it?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Because a supply chain capable of producing planetary roller screws and chest-mounted lithium batteries at scale doesn't just spring up overnight.
No, it doesn't. And this is where the Morgan Stanley report delivers a massive geographic reality check.
What do they find?
The supply chain for embodied AI is incredibly concentrated. Of the companies mapped out in the Humanoid 100, 73% are based in Asia.
73%.
Yeah. And when you look specifically at the integrators, the companies building the final robots, 77% are based in Asia, with 45% based specifically in China.
That is heavily tilted. Why is the center of gravity so firmly planted there?
It comes right back to the EV analogy. China currently dominates the global supply chain for electric vehicles, battery refinement, and rare earth materials.
So they have a head start.
A massive one. The internal components of a humanoid robot overlap so heavily with EV manufacturing that robotics companies in Asia are just leveraging mature existing supply chains. They don't have to build the infrastructure from scratch. They just have to adapt it.
And Western investors and companies are reportedly desperate to find local supply chain options outside of those massive players. But right now, the momentum is undeniably concentrated in Asia.
Absolutely.
And we cannot ignore the geopolitical environment that this $60 trillion market is trying to navigate.
We really can't. To understand how volatile the broader global environment is right now, we just have to look at the other news alerts hitting the terminal alongside these financial reports.
Right.
Captured on the exact same Benzinga page reporting Micron's blowout earnings is a headline regarding a closed-door GOP meeting.
Yeah, according to the report from June 24th, 2026, Donald Trump and Senator Bill Cassidy clashed over the ongoing Iran war, with Trump stating that the war is not going the way that we were told.
And for you listening, we need to pause right here and make something very, very clear.
Yes, absolutely.
Regardless of where anyone stands on that specific conflict or on domestic politics, and we are looking at this strictly and impartially as market context. That headline proves a critical point.
It does.
It highlights that the global markets and supply chains necessary to build embodied AI are operating under intense, unpredictable geopolitical stress.
Right, and we are absolutely not taking any sides or endorsing any political viewpoints regarding the GOP, Donald Trump, Senator Cassidy, or the Iran war.
Definitely not.
We're simply acknowledging that the rare earth magnets, the specialized semiconductors, and the complex assembly lines required to build tomorrow's workforce, they rely entirely on incredibly fragile borders and international trade agreements.
The technological hurdles of robotics are rapidly being cleared. The foundational models are mastering physics and simulations. The 22 degree of freedom hands are becoming a reality.
They're building the sci-fi stuff.
Yeah. But the physical logistics of sourcing the atoms and photons across a fractured geopolitical landscape, that is proving to be the ultimate bottleneck.
So if you are an operations manager waiting for a fleet of humanoids to staff your warehouse, or just, someone waiting for a robot to fold your laundry, your reality depends entirely on a highly concentrated supply chain operating in a very tense world.
It is a phenomenal logistical tightrope.
It really is, and tracking it from the ground up changes how you view the entire AI landscape.
Completely.
We've traced the paper trail today, starting with Apple fundamentally altering the iPhone 18 architecture to support local AI processing.
Right, pushing it to the edge.
We saw how that edge computing demand directly connects to tech giants handing Micron $18 billion in upfront cash just to secure memory chips years in advance.
The panic buying.
Exactly. And we followed that trail all the way to Morgan Stanley's roadmap of a $60 trillion embodied AI market, where automakers and tech titans are racing to integrate NVIDIA-trained brains into battery-powered bodies.
Before we wrap up, though, there's one lingering implication of this transition that I really want to leave our listeners to ponder.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we've explored the intricate web of suppliers building these 50 degree of freedom bodies, and we've seen the panic to secure memory for the digital brains.
Yeah.
But when these physical embodied AIs finally step into a real warehouse or walk into your living room and something goes wrong, who is ultimately responsible?
Oh, wow.
Right. If a 200-pound machine damages property or injures a human, where does the liability fall? Is it on the legacy automaker who physically manufactured the body? Or is it on the tech giant who coded and trained the digital brain that made the decision to move.
That is a fascinating legal nightmare.
It really is.
I mean, the law is going to have an incredibly difficult time catching up to a machine that thinks like a supercomputer but interacts with the world like a human.
Completely unprecedented.
It brings us right back to our starting point today. The glass screen that used to safely contain artificial intelligence has shattered.
It's out there now.
It is out in the physical world now, and the hardware race to build it and control it is moving faster than anyone predicted. Thank you so much for joining us on today's deep dive. We hope this gave you a completely new perspective on the multi-billion-dollar hardware panic happening just beneath the surface of the AI boom.
Keep your eyes on the hardware.
Exactly. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we will catch you on the next one. Farewell.